Hi there! You're at the JASMY Wyckoff analysis session, and we'll look at where JASMY are in terms of the Wyckoff stages, as well as what would they expect next. So let's start with the weekly chart, and here previously we talked about JASMY might have reached the sign of strength stage, and indeed it showed retracement, price retracement from that sign of strength heading towards maybe another test. So as of this moment, the first line of support would be at around 0.0112. The second line of support, the red one, is 0.008 before the bottom of the long-term playground zone at 0.0035 roughly. So that's the low back in 2023. Here, while we expect a test to come, if you're new to these sessions, the test can be shallow or deep. Back in 2024, November time, there was a deep test. If it's deeper than the selling climax, we call that a spring. So I can add back a tag to here, that's a second test, or you can just call that a test. So much similar to distribution, we've got second test, accumulation has second test as well, and you can just call them tests, because for me, whether it's accumulation, distribution, second test, spring, upwards of the distribution, all those terms, they're basically tests of market demand and supply. So here, back to the point where if we're really at like the midpoint or like the end of, near the end of an accumulation, so what we would expect is at the next distribution cycle, whether it would take another half a year to accumulate and eventually climax in early 2026, no one knows, because last time the buying climax came in December, just last year. Will we have something similar? Because there were two climaxes back in 2024. One was in June and the other was early December. So within a 6 months period, there were two peaks, and in the entire 2023, not 23, 25, we haven't seen any buying climax. So, like, even with all the positive news, right? This time, how long would it take to accumulate? Would it be something similar to what we had in 2022 all the way to 2024? So almost like 1.5 to 2 years time, or would we see something in between, because there were like pretty short accumulation for just like a quarter in 2024. So it will be really interesting to see after this accumulation finished and finally push the price to a new high. Hopefully JASMY will have that prime moment. Not sure whether they will get to the level in 2022, 21, 22, but at least hopefully we want to see it challenge what happened in December 2024. That's the purple line at around 5 cents. As of now, the upward trend is still going on, even though we expect price retracement from the sign of strength. And well, the test, obviously I've already mentioned, it can go deeper to the orange and the red line as well. Those are all normal activities within an accumulation cycle. Well, one thing to relieve the bulls is these red bars aren't really very high, so there aren't too much selling going on, not like what we've seen during the decline from the climax, as well as both times from the second test and the climaxes. So let's wait for the accumulation to complete and hope for some sign of backup and last point of support. So that means some kind of like horizontal build-up, and that's an early sign of a massive boost in terms of a Wyckoff textbook pattern. In the daily chart, previously we put in like, is the JASMY in the daily time frame heading towards a buying climax? Indeed it was, and it climaxed on the days of 21st and 22nd, just a little bit more than a week ago. And normal activity is automatic reaction. So what's next then? Would it have a second test back to the level of the yellow resistance line, like going through the white resistance at around 0.018 to all the way to 0.021? We have to look at the weekly chart. We said it's going through a retracement. So if it hasn't reached the point of the test, then logically the price will continue to go down. If that's the case, then this automatic reaction over here, there was a little bit of rebound, may not lead to a second test. So this little upward movement here, because it's very small, so after the automatic reaction, this little movement here, you can call it a second test, but if it really dies down to the new accumulation zone heading towards the new selling climax, we can call this the last point of supply as well, instead of a second test, because there's basically no more demand for this moment in time, and it will naturally go to a selling climax. So I might as well put in a selling climax here. So in 2 weeks time, when we come back to look at this, we'll see whether the price will reach this support line, this dashed support line over here. That's where we probably will find the selling climax. Of course, because we're looking at this to develop, or we're only coming back to look at this in 2 weeks time, there may be a chance that it happens so quickly that instead of just having the selling climax, you will see the automatic rally as well as a sign of strength as well coming back up to show us that the new distribution may be coming. So I'll keep all these tags over here and see whether the chart will develop in this way. So, and it can go deeper, it doesn't matter. So the support line that's here, the second support we already mentioned is 0.008. So that's the daily picture. It happens much more frequently than in the weekly. So hopefully we'll see a new buying climax or a new distribution cycle for JASMY in later this year or early next year. And that's all for today for JASMY.